November 7th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the latest developments in Gaza. According to Palestinian health authorities, the death toll from Israeli strikes has surpassed 10,000, which includes around 4,000 children. The UN says that Gaza is becoming a graveyard for children. South Korea will speed up and complete the construction of the first phase of the Great Train Express commuter rail network by next March, in the hopes of more convenient commuting and a change to the economic landscape in terms of real estate and industry. Chilly weather and cold winds have announced themselves here in South Korea, with some parts of the central region seeing cold wave alerts and some areas expected to see snow today. A month since Hamas militants attacked Israel, more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. And the WHO also says tens of thousands of pregnant women and new mothers are at risk due to a lack of medical facilities caused by Israeli airstrikes. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Gaza's health ministry said Monday that more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the armed conflict between Israel and Hamas. Among those killed, more than 4,100 are children. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called Gaza a graveyard for children, with the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency adding that one child has been killed every 10 minutes. The World Health Organization has also raised great concern over the health of pregnant women, new mothers, and infants in the Gaza Strip, where many hospitals and medical facilities have shut down due to ongoing airstrikes by Israel. According to the WHO, there are about 50,000 new mothers and pregnant women in the Gaza Strip, with more than 180 babies born every day. It added that 4,600 pregnant women and 380 newborns residing in refugee camps operated by the UN throughout Gaza need treatment. Meanwhile, Israeli forces advanced deeper into Gaza on Monday with more airstrikes overnight. Monday's airstrikes and ground attacks focused on the northern half of the Gaza Strip, where the Israel Defense Forces believe Hamas has most of its strongholds. On Sunday, the Israeli military struck over 450 Hamas targets while also taking control of a Hamas military compound. Within the compound were underground tunnels, observation points, and training facilities for Hamas fighters. Following a two-day suspension, dozens of foreign passport holders, as well as some medical evacuees on Monday, passed through the Rafah crossing from Gaza into Egypt. According to the Gaza Border Authority, Egyptians and foreign citizens already on pre-approved lists issued since last week were allowed through. 80 dual nationals and 17 medical evacuees left Gaza through Rafah, with 48 aid trucks crossing in the other direction. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
New U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean Human Rights Julie Turner has said Washington will cooperate with partners and allies and give strength to the voices of defectors in order to resolve the human rights issues in North Korea. Turner was speaking at her inauguration in Washington on Monday, where she promised to achieve 5 priorities outlined in her Senate confirmation hearing. And those promises include cooperation with partners such as South Korea to improve the human rights of North Korean defectors, strengthening accountability at the UN level, and urging North Korea to improve human rights. The Special Envoy for North Korean Human Rights is an ambassador-level position involved in the overall formulation and implementation of the U.S. government's human rights policy toward North Korea. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is making a 2-day visit to Seoul from Wednesday. Now, his trip will be a busy one with a lot to cover on the security and diplomatic front. For more, let's turn to Professor Min Jung-won this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Professor Min, it'll be Blinken's first Seoul visit in over 2 years and also the first under the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. Now, the question is, why is it coming and why now?
Yes, as you mentioned, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit South Korea later this week, and it will be his first trip to Seoul since the launch of Yoon government. And it is known that Secretary Blinken will have a 2-day trip to Seoul after attending the G7 foreign ministers meeting in Tokyo. And in Seoul, Blinken will have meetings with President Yoon, Foreign Minister Park Jin, and National Security Advisor Cho Tae-yong. So it is likely that they will discuss various issues like the RK-US alliance, North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats, and its military cooperation with Russia, war in Ukraine, and escalating tensions in the Middle East. There are lots of issues that they will deal with. In addition, it is expected that there will be a summit between U.S. and China during the upcoming APEC summit at San Francisco later this month. So attention has been paid to whether Blinken will share some information about the summit with his South Korean counterpart during his visit to Seoul.
Right, lots of diplomatic events are unfolding, like you mentioned, the upcoming summit between Biden and Xi, and also a lot of developments are happening here on the Korean Peninsula. But at the same time, there are concerns that the U.S. attention will be turned more toward to the crises over in Ukraine and maybe over in the Middle East rather than here on the Korean Peninsula. Professor Min, is that so? Should South Korea be really worried about it?
Yes, I think that the Secretary Blinken will talk about the crisis in Ukraine and the Middle East with his South Korean counterparts during his visit to Seoul. But before talking about those issues, the Secretary Blinken will also emphasize the U.S. commitment to the defense of South Korea and reaffirm the importance of the trilateral cooperation among South Korea, U.S., and Japan following the Camp David summit. So although U.S. is very busy with coping with both the war in Ukraine and Israel-Hamas conflict at the same time, we will also try to ensure that it continues to actively engage in the Indo-Pacific region, where U.S. has its vital interests in the 21st century. And at the core of the U.S. engagement in the Indo-Pacific region, including the tracking the rise of China and the search of policy orientation, requires to enhance its cooperation with the major regional allies like South Korea and Japan. So there would be a little change in U.S. commitment to defending South Korea and stably managing the security situation on the Korean Peninsula, despite the ongoing crisis in Ukraine and the Middle East.
Definitely. You mentioned this earlier. Blinken's trip is also timely due to those developments here on the Korean Peninsula, with North Korea likely to go ahead with its third attempt to launch a spy satellite within the year. Now, there will probably be a collective voice calling out on the North again this time, right?
Yes, I think so. During the Secretary Blinken's visit to Seoul, one of the main agendas of the meetings with his South Korean counterparts will be North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats and Pyongyang's increasing military cooperation with Moscow. As you know, North Korea announced that it plans to test launch another military spy satellite in October after 2 unsuccessful attempts in May and August, but it has not taken place yet. So to cope with North Korea's continuous provocations, U.S. will take robust steps in the military preparedness and cooperation with South Korea, and it will also continue to strictly implement UN Security Council resolutions. In addition, Secretary Blinken is likely to reaffirm the U.S. commitment to provide extended deterrence to South Korea against North Korea's military threats. And regarding increasing military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang, it is likely that U.S. will continue to take steps to hold North Korea accountable for its actions, including the additional sanctions. So we will see what will actually happen later this week.
Right, that calling out on the regime will only be firmer and stricter. We also have to go back to the crisis over in Ukraine and in the Middle East. Then what conclusion do you think Blinken and President Yoon will actually draw out on those conflicts?
Well, the South Korea has been cautious and will be cautious continuously. Basically, as I mentioned, the Secretary Blinken will talk about the crisis in Ukraine and the Middle East during his visit to Seoul, because the two countries are very important to the international players at the current stage. And regarding the war in the Ukraine and Israel and Hamas conflict, U.S. has provided military weapons and equipment and humanitarian aid, but has not directly involved in the military operations there. And the South Korea has the similar situations. South Korea has played its roles by providing humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. So they will talk about how South Korea could provide additional assistance to Ukraine and what roles South Korea could do for the Israel and Hamas conflict. But in my opinion, considering that South Korea has taken a serious, cautious position about Israel and the Hamas conflict, it is very likely that South Korea will focus on providing just the humanitarian assistance to the Middle East as a responsible global stakeholder.
Definitely. Professor Mann, before I let you go, Blinken's visit to Seoul also comes ahead of the much-anticipated summit, like we discussed earlier, between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC summit in San Francisco that's upcoming. Now, will that summit be a turning point, do you think, for the situation here on the Korean Peninsula? What do you think?
No, unfortunately not. Most experts, including myself, do not expect that the U.S.-China upcoming summit will be the significant turning point. And I don't think that it will make the significant impact on the situation on the Korean Peninsula either. It is mainly because they have contrasting opinions about the major issues like the high-tech industry, global supply chains, trade, security on Taiwan Strait, and South China Sea. And these topics are their core interests, and they don't want to make any concessions about their interest in any of the topics. So I think that they will just exchange their opinions about the topics at the summit. Meanwhile, both countries seem to agree that they needed to manage their relationship in order to prevent them from confronting an extreme security situation like a serious military engagements and escalation to a full-scale war around the Taiwan Strait or South China Sea. So I think that there is a high probability that the two countries will agree to establish a military hotline between them, and that will be their major achievement for the summit meeting. So it would not be possible for the upcoming summit to turn the tide of the intensifying U.S.-China strategic competition. So such an outcome will not be strong enough to make a positive impact on the situation around the Korean Peninsula.
Sure, we'll have to get back to you after that Biden-Xi summit comes to an end. All right, thanks so much for your insight. As always, Professor Mann, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Yoon announced that the first line of the high-speed commuter rail network, the GTX connecting Seoul to the outskirts of the metropolitan area, will open next March, with hopes of establishing a hyper-connected economic zone. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
South Korea plans to establish a broader economic zone through expediting the opening of the GTX high-speed commuter rail network. The first phase will begin with GTX-A from Dongtan Station, about 30 kilometers south of the capital, to Suseol in Seoul's Gangnam-gu district next March. During his visit to the GTX-A construction site on Monday, President Yoon noted the commute from Dongtan to Suseol will be around 19 minutes when the line opens. He added more lines, GTX-B and C, will be opened faster, making Seoul reachable in 30 minutes from anywhere in the greater capital region.
수도권 어디든 간에 30분 이내에 도착하고 서울까지 어느 지역을 가든지 1시간 이내에는 다 갈 수 있게, 그리고 중심부까지는 30분 이내.
The GTX-B line will connect Incheon just west of Seoul to Namyangju, east of the capital, and the C line will connect Yangju some 30 kilometers north of the capital to Suwon, just south of Seoul. Construction on the C line will begin at the end of this year, with work on the B line set to start early next year. The GTX project is one of Yoon's election pledges and part of his administration's policy tasks, where he vowed to open up an era of 30-minute commutes to and from the Seoul metropolitan area. President Yoon stressed that the GTX isn't just a transportation solution, but rather a way to create a hyper-connected economic zone. He emphasized its potential to change the economic landscape near GTX lines, such as stabilizing the real estate market and generating more job opportunities. The Korea Transport Institute expects the GTX project to affect the economy to the tune of some 30 trillion won, or $23 billion. 210,000 jobs are also expected to be created. As for fares, the president said the anticipated fare will be around 4,000 won, or roughly around $3 one way, but added the government will ensure fares will remain affordable.
저소득층과 어려운 서민들에게는 약 53%의 최대 할인율을 차등 적용해서 나머지는 정부 재정으로, 중앙정부와 지방정부 재정으로 이렇게 분담을 해서 지원할 계획입니다.
The president also promised more routes, including lines D, E, and F, each connecting the Seoul capital area with the outskirts of the metropolitan region. 신세벽, Arirang News.
On the first day of the resuspension of stock short selling on Monday, South Korea stocks had their biggest rally since 2020, with the country's benchmark Kospi surging well above 5%. In fact, trading on the tech-heavy Kosdaq even had to be halted for a moment. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korean stocks jumped on Monday, the first day that the country temporarily banned short selling. According to the Korea Exchange, South Korea's benchmark index, the Kospi closed up 5.66%, while the secondary Kosdaq market rose 7.34%. This comes after the Financial Services Commission announced on Sunday it would impose a short-selling ban from Monday until at least June next year to prevent further massive losses by retail investors. And the upward trend was witnessed from the opening bell. The Korea Exchange said a sidecar limit was activated at 9:57 a.m. for 5 minutes when the Kosdaq 150 futures soared 6.02% from its previous close, and the Kosdaq 150 index jumped 7.3%. A sidecar limit is a trading curve that is activated when there is a rise of more than 6% compared to the previous close on the Kosdaq 150 futures, and when the Kosdaq 150 index rises 3% for more than a minute. This is the first time in 3.5 years that the sidecar has been activated. The gain was especially prominent in technology stocks, with secondary battery shares of EcoPro BM and EcoPro closing up 30% and 29% each. While this was largely owed to expectations that volatility in battery stocks would be lowered, it is uncertain how long this will last.
There is no guarantee that they will continue to rise in the long run. Those stocks rose because they're currently sensitive to government policies and changes in the market. It's also because the situation has changed quite suddenly.
The surge seen on Monday was also largely led by foreign investors. Unlike domestic institutions and retail individual investors who turned net sellers after the ban was announced, foreign investors bought local stocks. However, in the medium to long term, foreign investors may also turn into net sellers.
It hasn't even been a day yet, so this can't exactly be seen as a pattern. As of now, you can say that there are foreigners who expect stocks to go up, but who knows what will happen as time passes.
The expert added that investors need to continue using fundamental analyses to see which stocks and investors the short-selling ban will impact. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The prices of overseas group tours for Koreans has seen the biggest jump in 13 years amid higher prices of travel services. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, overseas group tours in October cost 15.9% more than they did at the same time last year. This is the biggest on-year jump since September 2010. Now, the rise comes as global inflation pushes up the cost of flight tickets, accommodation and food, while increased oil prices lead to higher fuel tax. Industry sources also point to changing travel trends as more people tend to travel in small groups out of post-pandemic safety concerns and shift away from hitting multiple shopping spots. Meanwhile, prices for domestic group tours are on the decline due to the base effect and the rollout of discount coupons.
Good morning. I'm Kim Si-young. We'll now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Russia, where current Russian President Vladimir Putin seeks to stay in power by running in the March 2024 election. This decision by the 71-year-old former KGB agent will keep him in power through 2030. While Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov commented that the campaign has not been officially announced yet, Reuters sources stated that the decision has been made and the Kremlin's advisors are in preparation. Putin reportedly enjoys an approval rating of 80% inside Russia. He has been in control of Russia since succeeding Boris Yeltsin in 1999. The election comes amid the ongoing Russo-Ukraine war and Western sanctions on Moscow. Now moving over to Africa, where mass flooding has left at least 30 people dead as of Monday and tens of thousands of people displaced in Kenya and Somalia. The flooding began last month as the 2023 Deir seasonal rains intensified. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said the overflowing of the Juba and Shabelle rivers left many dead, homes and infrastructure destroyed. It also said some 2,400 residents of Somalia's Luke district are trapped by the flood waters. The heavy rains in Somalia came after 4 years of extreme drought. In neighbouring Kenya, the death toll has risen to 15 since Friday, with the Kenya Red Cross saying the flash floods killed over 1,000 livestock and destroyed over 240 acres of farmland. On Monday in the UK, protesters from the Just Stop Oil climate change action group damaged the glass cover of a painting at London's National Gallery. 2 protesters in their early 20s were arrested after using safety hammers to smash the glass cover of the 17th century painting. Dozens of other Just Stop Oil activists who were blocking roads in nearby Whitehall were also detained. The painting, Rockaby Venus by Diego Velázquez, was previously damaged in 1914 after being slashed by Canadian suffragette Mary Richardson. Now, off the coast of the Italian island of Sardinia, local amateur divers on Saturday discovered up to 50,000 ancient Roman coins. According to Italy's Ministry of Culture, the recovered ancient coins are likely to be from a shipwreck from the 4th century off the coast of Arzachena in Sardinia. The bronze coins from this period are called follies, introduced around 294 AD by the then Roman Emperor Diocletian. Authorities have stated that the coins are in an exceptionally well-preserved state. A similar discovery of almost 23,000 coins was made in 2013 in the UK county of Devon.
A surge of frigid air filtered into South Korea overnight. The nation saw a significant drop in temperatures this morning. In fact, for parts of central regions, cold wave alerts are currently in place. Morning temperatures in Seoul are starting off at 4.4 degrees Celsius, which is the lowest of the season so far. Due to frigid wind chill, sensible temperatures will be much lower in the negative territory. Make sure to dress in layers to keep your body temperatures warm. Along with the cold temperatures, there will be strong winds from time to time. Coastlines and Jeju Island are currently under strong wind alerts. Inland regions will also see gusty winds from time to time, with winds gusting as fast as 15 meters per second. Make sure to secure any items that can get blown away. Daytime temperatures will get a touch warmer. Seoul and Chuncheon will be reaching 10 degrees Celsius. This round of cold snap will last until tomorrow. For this weekend, much colder temperatures are in the forecast. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라, 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라, 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라, 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's lying? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Hello, I'm Gustav Slamečka, Czech ambassador. Arirang TV is doing its best as a media diplomacy channel representing Korea by delivering current affairs information and news in a balanced voice. Everyone I meet can get news about Korea through Arirang, and we are thankful. I hope Arirang TV will continue to take the lead in delivering Korea's news to the world And I hope it will be a channel for the world and Korea to synthesize. Resonating with the world, Arirang.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's November 7th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And Park Ki-hoon.
Thank you for having me.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. K-pop group Big Bang's former leader G-Dragon appeared before the Incheon Metropolitan Police Agency on Monday to undergo investigations over suspicions of drug use. He tested negative in a simplified drug test, and ever since being booked in October, the singer has denied all illegal drug use and has made it clear that he voluntarily came in front of police for investigation to clear his name. His fans have since used the hashtag #WeStandWithG-Dragon to show their support. Moving on, after 3 days of searching, police have finally found fugitive Kim Gil-soo, who had been on the run after being arrested for robbery last week. He was caught after calling his girlfriend using a payphone. Kim originally had a $7,600 bounty on his name. He was last seen on Saturday, and shortly after being detained, Kim told his guards that he had swallowed a part of a plastic spoon. He was then transferred to a hospital, and Kim reportedly said he had to use the restroom. He then used his chance to sprint out and escape via taxi. And staying with crimes here in South Korea, prosecutors on Monday demanded the suspect behind a high-profile murder case in Busan, Chung Yoo-jung, be sentenced with the death penalty. They say that's because Chung displayed extreme cruelty. She allegedly stabbed her victim more than 110 times. And for those of you who might not recall this case, back in May, 23-year-old Chung Yoo-jung was indicted on charges of killing a female freelance tutor. This tutor was also in her 20s and had no personal or prior connection with the assailant. And police later identified Chung to have murdered, dismembered, and abandoned her victim's body purely out of curiosity. Now, here in the studio, what did you guys think about this case?
Honestly, I am for the death penalty and a firm believer of the phrase an eye for an eye. Look, killing someone for any reason is not acceptable, whether it was like 100 years ago and even 100 years later. And I think it really, the execution process really honors the victim, helps console the grieving families, and ensures the perpetrators never have the opportunity to cause a future tragedy moving forward. So, yeah, I'm a little for.
All
death
right.
penalty. Yep.
Where do you stand on this?
So I've been keeping a close eye on this crime. Like, though if you're given the death penalty, we also discussed it on this show a few times. The last people to be executed here in Korea was back in December 1997, and actually 23 criminals died on the same day, accused of murdering at least 2 people. It's now been 26 years later, okay? So this may be just one of those news headlines that sees it for one day and then many forget about it like the next day or for many years to come. Now, I believe now, including Chung Yoo-jung, Korea has now 60 inmates on death row, and all of which have been convicted of murder. And now this includes like infamous serial killers, Kang Ho-son and Yoo Yong-cho. Both of these criminals or serial killers were convicted of their crimes back in the mid-2000s. So this, though she may be given the death penalty, we might not see this out until many, many years later, or the law could change.
Exactly. I think that's why a lot of people are quite furious as to find out what the regulations are in regards to the death penalty here in Korea, because it seems like it's just another life sentence and not a lot of people are seeing the sentencing happen. But in the meantime, that was our news feed for this Tuesday. Let's switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day. My AI voice secretary will tell us what we'll talk about today.
Reputation seems key for celebrities. Once you make a mistake, it's close to impossible to bounce back to previous levels of popularity, especially if you get caught up in illicit behavior or social misconduct. News Generation will debate about how far we should go when it comes to penalizing celebrities who have made a mistake. Further, finding out what level of misconduct is acceptable.
Today we're going to be talking about how okay the Korean public, especially those from our generation, is with celebrities who have once been involved in illicit actions or misconduct coming back on screen. Now, this is a heated topic here in the country, as we're seeing top celebrities like actor Lee Sung-kyun from the Oscar-winning movie Parasite and K-pop star G-Dragon appearing in front of the police over allegations of illegal drug use. But it's not the first time that the public has discussed to which extent it's okay for these types of celebrities to be back allowed on screen, right, Walter?
Yeah, no, it isn't. So there seems to be a recurring, company, especially with the K-pop artists who found with illegal drugs in their possession. Why don't we look at what Korea is trying to do about this, though? The Korean Broadcasting Deliberation regulation said during a parliamentary meeting that they will consider any famous public figure from returning to broadcasting programs if they were to be caught with, drugs or any other serious crimes. Now, in the past, there have been countless celebrities who have been charged with serious crimes, only to, go on this 2-year hiatus, then return to make millions and millions of dollars again. And some would actually argue that this 2-year hiatus is just a holiday for the stars, and then once they come back, they're wealthy again.
So just adding on to what Walter just said, currently under the Korean Broadcasting Deliberation regulation, there is no set regulation that lays out specific conditions of the suspension of a celebrity appearing back on TV. So hence, the reason why we're seeing so many celebrities make a comeback after a few years of just, staying low-key and making more and more money afterwards. So also, I think media is kind of used to sway away the public's attention or make it even more of a hot issue to cover up something else. So I think seeing these 2 big stars all of a sudden
headlines,
making all the headlines is a little controversial and questionable, but obviously we have to wait and see what happens later on. But I think it's not up to the public to judge their wrongdoing and how much they should be penalized, but rather for the government to really step in now and just set forth proper and clearer regulations, whether on the suspension of their period, whether it's short-term, long-term, or even lifetime.
It should be up to the police to do the investigations. But it's no doubt that the public seems to be loving to talk about this. Once it hits headlines, a lot of people pour in their attention. And I must say that there's a lot of split opinions regarding this matter. So what do you guys personally think about whether celebrities who've once made a mistake, should they be able to come back onto the screen, even though it's like illicit behavior?
Yeah, well, everyone loves celebrity gossip. So, I do understand that, celebrities are just people as well, and they deserve their own privacy and make mistakes. Saying that though, when you have such a larger than life, status, it comes with a lot of responsibilities. Now, put it this way, if you're an owner of a company and it's doing well, but you make a massive mistake, which costs everything in your company, that's on you. But unless this is a huge company, it's not going to make the spotlight. But my point is, at the end of the day, we all have responsibilities to uphold our own reputations. If one chooses to do something illegal and, have bad consequences, then you must pay the price, whether you're famous or not. If, I were to be caught with any sort of illegal stuff here in Arirang, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair the next day, I know that.
So you do understand that, like, public figures, while they might have a lot of burden as a celebrity, you might not have a personal life, but then at the end of the day, you think as a human being, you should be like staying in line and not doing all these illicit behavior, and you shouldn't get away with it. What about you, Yoon?
No, I do agree with Walter. Celebrities and influencers, they devote their time and effort to make it big and make themselves known to the public to obviously become famous and make a lot of money. And I think the really lucky and super talented celebrities make ridiculous amounts of money. And I know that, we all know that, and we envy that. So I think they should act a bit more responsible, and I'm sure everything comes at a cost, so they have to be extra careful of their actions. And just because they have fame, power, and influence, I think it doesn't give them the right to get away with illegal acts, which is a slap on the wrist. And I think giving a second chance might seem like the right thing to do, but if celebrities consider themselves to be, extra special people, I think they should act like one.
That's true. Now, we asked our viewers the same question, how they felt about celebrities making a comeback after committing crimes or showing social misconduct. Now, here's what 3 of our global viewers had to say. Let's start with Chelsea. Chelsea said, it depends on the crime. I feel everyone deserves a chance to get a second chance. You Can Change Elias said, in short, yes, they can come back. If anyone is convicted legally by a court for murder, rape, kidnapping, they have no way to come back no matter what they do. Jack said, successful comebacks are very rare in my opinion. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. got the role of Iron Man. That was like a miracle. Now, thank you to all our viewers who did share their insights on today's discussion topic. And it seems like even among our viewers, opinions seem to be split. I mean, if you're a public figure, you must have that much responsibility, whereas all celebrities are human beings. They might deserve a second chance. But Yoon, why don't you explain in more depth about the arguments made by those who are strongly against celebrities who've committed a crime or been in a big scandal form from coming back in front of the public?
Like I mentioned before, celebrities, they carry a big reputation that can have a huge influence on not only the public, but many young adults who aspire to become celebrities just like them when they grow up. So firstly, you don't want to see your favorite idol making the headlines for the wrong reason. And also, but seeing them back on air just after one kind of apology and just staying quiet for a while, I think it only gives out false impressions that many celebrities kind of possess unfair privilege, and it's okay to commit these kind of crimes only because it's your first offense. And also, I think K-content has become a global phenomenon, and it has raised the status of Korea. We all agree, and I think the K-entertainment sector plays a pivotal asset to the Korean economy. So big stars like Lee Sung-kyun and G-Dragon, making this kind of controversy will only damage the overall reputation.
So they do have responsibilities that they should take on forth. Now, Walter, what's the opposing argument to that?
Okay, so for people out there who still support the celebrities, like the opposing argument would be that we are putting too much of a putting our celebrities too much high on a pedestal in regard to moral standards, and this is like in comparison to politicians. But I would argue in Korea everything ties back to politics, different discussion altogether. The other argument that comes from a sympathetic view, which is since they are so well known amongst the public, they will lose popularity, as one of the people mentioned in the comments, and if they were caught doing something, losing that respect of the general public is enough punishment. Now, some say our celebrities in Korea get more controversy compared to Hollywood. I don't really agree with this, but Korea, since it's such a small country, we really look up to these celebrities. We really make them a big thing because it's such an amazing achievement for Koreans to make it on a global stage. Like in other countries like Australia and America, they're not so passionate. There's an Australian in a Hollywood movie, whatever. But if a Korean goes to a Hollywood movie, we put them on such a high pedestal, and people are like, hey, we should forgive them eventually.
Because it's really hard for them to get there. I think that's why we hype them up so much. Now, we're going to include an insider from the entertainment industry in our talks to widen our perspectives on today's issue. Stay tuned to see what this expert has to say on today's topic. Let's now talk to Bernie Cho, the president of DFSB Collective, an agency that collaborates with artists and their management to better connect them to their local and global fans. Welcome, Bernie.
Oh, good morning.
All right, I'd like to ask you the first question. How common is it for celebrities who've shown misconduct to come back on air in other parts of the world?
I think for me, it's a lot easier to talk about the U.S., L.A., which is where I'm usually at, but you got me good this morning because I'm actually in Seoul. But it's obviously in Hollywood. I think scandals is pretty much, the norm, very much like Korea. It feels like that these days. But I think the way Hollywood, and more importantly, I think the U.S. market handles celebrity scandal is a bit different. I think really the delineating and differentiating factor is what is the type of scandal. I think when it comes to drugs or alcohol or making, statements or jokes that are inappropriate, that really sort of, I think, falls under the sort of category of self-harm. And in instances like that, there almost seems to be like a rule book or playbook on how to resuscitate your image, your public image. And you don't see that in Korea. In Hollywood, what often happens is that if a celebrity is struggling with a drug or alcohol problem and hence is arrested or caught, you can almost pretty much predict what is going to be the path to redemption. Number one is obviously the admission or, in many cases, the mugshot. Two is they go into rehab to address these mental or physical health problems, or they go into some sort of program. For instance, if you make an anti-Semitic comment or a racist comment, there are programs for, seeking sort of treatment. And then after that, it seems like if you're a big star, you tend to pick sort of who your favorite talk show host is. For a long time, Oprah Winfrey was the go-to.
Right.
And then you sort of do a tell-all. And, that's really often when actors and actresses have to put on their best performance to show whether they are sincere in their deserving of redemption. And then from that point forward, it becomes a business decision for TV networks and film studios to decide whether or not to cast these particular people back. And often when these casting decisions are made, not only is it obviously a creative decision, but a commercial decision. So for instance, some actors or actresses are considered too high risk to the point that insurance companies will not insure a TV show or a film, and hence they're canceled on that route. But I think the fact that celebrities have a path to redemption, which often and I think requires and involves rehabilitation, I think is good. We don't see that in Korea. I think when a celebrity gets caught in a scandal, they're crucified. People almost take some sort of weird guilty pleasure in building up and then tearing down their favorite stars. And I think that's unfortunate. I think for a first-time offender, I think there's room for second chance. But if they repeat the same thing a second and third time, then obviously that's a different discussion. But definitely, I agree that when it comes to cancellation, when it involves harming others, when it involves violence, when it involves things of a sexual nature, outright cancellation from the get-go, I think there's no room for recovery or redemption.
I see.
I completely agree with you there. And as a person of the general public, I also just imagine that because they're so famous anyway, they're probably taking drugs. It just seems to be a connection that I make anyway, but it's probably an overgeneralization. But what is the general public's reaction towards celebrities who want to come back on air after being caught up in scandals or social misconduct?
Again, I think it is coming back to it has to do with redemption and sincerity. Ultimately, I think fans have to take a little bit of blame and a little bit of responsibility for these circumstances because, celebrities, as much as they're looked up to, and again, I think when we use the word idol, in some ways it's kind of dangerous because the word idol implies through its sort of categorization, there's sort of an insinuation and more importantly, an expectation that these idols should somehow be perfect. And that's just not humanly possible. Korean fan culture, on the upside, positive side, they're incredibly passionate. But the downside, the dark side is the word fan comes from the word fanatic, and there are times where fans feel like fanatics. And the amount of abuse that Korean celebrities go through, I think, is second to none in the world in terms of what they have to endure. And hence, I understand the levels of stress that they go through that makes it very tough. Exactly. Now, one of the problems about Korea is we're seeing this right now with the drug scandals. Some of these accused celebrities may have been fallen victim to blackmail or extortion by being such high-profile figures, and we can't rule that out as one of the reasons why they're in trouble. They may not be as guilty as seen because they might be a victim themselves of extortion. And then the other thing that really troubles me and bothers me is that the Korean defamation laws are incredibly weak. I have seen and heard, that certain celebrities are jokingly accused of being involved because some fan or somebody out there just puts that up on social media and it goes viral without any validation or verification. And these poor celebrities and artists are victimized for something that they haven't done. Right. And so I think that fans also need to not lay all the blame on the stars. Some of it needs to come back to them as well.
Bernie, just shortly, what do you think should be the regulations or standard to allow celebrities to come back on air?
I think right now, the current sort of, I think personally, if it involves drugs or alcohol, I think, a temporary ban of be it a year, I think honestly for me is okay. But I do think they should add and require rehabilitation or some sort of treatment for these celebrities, because that to me seems to be missing in Korea. I mean, if it's done privately, great, but I think it should be publicly known for the fans to know that their favorite stars are trying to make amends and are trying to become better people. I'm troubled by the fact that, while these celebrities are knocked off air, there's still some celebrities in Korea that are back on air for horrific crimes involving, anything from harassment to rape or to, killing people by accident while they're drunk. So the fact that these particular celebrities are on air, I don't understand the double standard because I really, really see those as two very different things. I believe many people deserve second chances. I just can't believe the obsession of drugs trumping things that I think are just frankly more horrific and more importantly harm to others is something that needs to be relooked at as a whole.
That is a great point you mentioned there, Bernie. Thank you so much. It was such a nice time talking to you today.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Now, if we expand on the last question we asked Bernie, when should we allow celebrities to make a comeback? And I would like to add towards the end of the comment that Bernie made, I do think South Korean fan culture is quite different to that of abroad, given the fact that as fans, though it comes from the word fanatics, we are quite obsessed with our celebrities. We idolize them in a sense, but at the same time, I think the reason why we prioritize their conduct when it comes to drugs is also because we have a very strict no drug policy, and it's the law here in Korea, and that would be breaking a law. But apart from that, when do you think celebrities should be allowed to come back on air?
Well, just to quickly add on to what you said as well, Korea is one of the first countries I knew that have like an anti-fan club.
Yeah, true.
So, which I thought was quite interesting that people would gather together in order just to abuse the celebrity. I find that very weird, and it's hopefully saying that I won't get an anti-fan club, but yeah, I think it's just a stupid idea to have such a club. It's really bad. But
when the goods are good, the goods are good, and the lows are bad. Yeah,
exactly. So I definitely think the more serious the crime is, the less opportunities they should get in the future. Like if basically what Bernie said, and to be honest with you, the higher the crime, the more severe the crime, especially when it comes to murder, sexual assault, etc. That should be a complete no coming back situation. Now, it's hard for me to think of what maybe a light crime would be. I mean, drink driving could be considered light, but it's not, because it could take someone's life even if you didn't do that. But yes, I guess the lighter the crime, the more chance. But as I said, I don't even know where to draw the line of a light crime.
It's definitely a tricky issue. Where do you stand on this, Kim?
No, I completely agree with Walter, and of course what Bernie said. But if it's like a crime where it's considered like self-harm, you're not really affecting other people. I mean, yes, give them a second chance. But at the end of the day, people do make mistakes, but I think you just got to be more careful and a bit more responsible, not just for celebrities, but also for on the fan side as well.
Exactly, and I think in times like this, we need to stay more vigilant. We should not try to jump to any conclusions, and as Bernie mentioned, though we have a really nice fan culture here in Korea, when it goes bad, it does get bad, and I think that's why we shouldn't be too quick to jump to any conclusions. Also, not to witch hunt, especially when police are still going through investigations. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And Park Ki-ho.
Always a pleasure.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠.